call to order the Rosemont Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or modifications to tonight's agenda?
Madam Chair, staff would just recommend moving the discussion item behind new business.
Thank you. I have that noted. Is there any input from the audience on items that are not on our public hearing agenda this evening? Moving on, we'll move forward to the consent agenda. Are there any comments or questions from the commission on the consent agenda?
Yes, Chair Kenger. I'd like to make some changes, some suggested revisions to the minutes.
Okay.
I could pull that from the consent agenda.
We will pull the minutes of the April 25th, 2023 regular meeting from the consent agenda. Are there any other comments or questions on the consent agenda, which now consists of just the request by Schafer Richardson for their final plat? Seeing none, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Kenninger, seconded by Commissioner Reed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will now move to discussing the minutes of the April 25th, 2023 regular meeting. And Commissioner Whitman, I want to turn it over to you, and you want to share your modifications?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just have a few modifications. I read the minutes, and I saw some things that I think were inaccurate or just kind of jumbled up. And so I sent staff some requested revisions. I think you all have, of those same revisions, a copy of them. These appear on, first of all, page 5 of the minutes, page 6 of the agenda, but page 5 of the minutes, the third full paragraph starting with Commissioner Whitman. If we can strike requirements of 50 from the building and replace that with requirements that apply to the use. Also strike the word onerous and replace that with loud, and then strike, quote, or anything abrasive and replace that with, quote, venue. I rewatched the video and those are more accurate words that I stated and that Mr. Schmidt stated as well during my interactions with him. And then page 10, page 9 of the minutes, page 10 of the agenda, the heading for 5C, just a typo error that I thought I'd throw in there too, but it should be conditional use permit rather than condition use permit. So if we can change that as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Whitman, for your thorough review of the minutes and catching those items. Are there any other comments or questions on the revisions to the minutes?
No.
Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 25th, 2023 meeting with the revisions outlined by Commissioner Whitman.
Second.
As moved by Commissioner Kenninger, seconded by Commissioner Powell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. We will now move to we just did the consent agenda. We will now move to the public hearing section, and this evening we have one item on the public hearing section. It is a request by New Horizon Academy for a site plan review, and I will turn it over to Anthony.
All right, one moment, Madam Chair. So this is a request by New Horizon Academy for a site plan review in order to construct a child care center on a parcel located northeast of the intersection of Business Parkway and County Road 42. The applicant is requesting a site plan review as required by the city code for commercial uses. In this zoning district, child care centers are a permitted use, and the applicant is not requesting any variances or deviations from the code. Staff does find that the site plan is consistent with the requirements of the zoning ordinance, subject to the conditions staff has prepared in the recommended action section of the executive summary. So as I said, the site is located in the northeast quadrant of Business Parkway and County Road 42. This is just east of South Robert Trail and west of Biscayne Avenue, north of the Rosemount Business Park. The site itself is zoned highway commercial. It's similar to general commercial that the rest of the area is zoned. Originally, the background on this site was that there was an anticipated development of a gas station on the site, and so it was rezoned to that highway commercial zoning district when it became apparent to the potential developer that the access here would be limited in the future to a 3/4 access, meaning any vehicles entering 42 from Business Parkway to the north or to the south would not be able to make left turns. Staff does want to note that there is a future signal planned to the east at Biscayne Avenue that would allow for full traffic movements. Some differences between the highway commercial and the general commercial zoning district also are the highway commercial zoning district allows for more auto-oriented uses as well as some outdoor storage. But as I said earlier, child care facilities are a permitted use in that zoning district as well as the general commercial zoning district. Site plan will be laid out with the principal structure in the central sort of southwest corner of the site facing the northeast. Access into the site will come from a drive from 149th Street west. The site will also contain some outdoor play areas surrounded by a fence with the parking lot in the northeast corner of the site. The site plan, as provided by the applicant, meets all of the setback requirements for this zoning district, including the additional 20-foot setback from County Road 42. That's a requirement for all parcels that abut an arterial roadway. So that setback is 30 feet as required. Parking on the site, the requirement is 1 parking stall per 20 children plus 1 per staff. That equals 34 stalls based on the anticipated number of children the applicant has provided. The site itself shows 30 stalls. And there is a small expansion here, a future expansion of the site, which would contain 3 classrooms with 22 children each and a total of 6 staff.
Anthony, you just said 30 stalls, but you meant 50, right?
Yes.
Okay,
50.
thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted-
The expansion would require an additional 10 stalls. So between the initial phase and the expansion, that would be a total of 44 stalls required, which would already be met by the site plan as shown. The applicant did provide a proof of parking in the eastern portion of the parking lot that extends south that would increase the total amount of parking provided to 72 stalls if those are constructed. But based on the requirements of the code, that proof of parking would not be necessary, although the applicant is free to do so. This plan also shows the utilities of the site. Wastewater and water will be brought in from existing stubs in 149th Street West. Stormwater will be managed off-site with the majority of stormwater traveling to the existing stormwater pond to the east with some additional drainage down to the south. The city stormwater consultant is reviewing the assumptions made by the applicant with regards to the capacity of the existing stormwater pond and if that will need to be expanded or not. And if so, that would be a requirement of the city engineer. The applicant provided a landscape plan that contains 41 trees, which is the amount required by the city code. Based on the area of the site, 1 tree per 3,000 square feet, 32 trees are required. And the city code also requires a certain amount of the parking lot to be landscaped. And within that landscaped area, which is comprised of an island, peninsula, and some of the perimeter area, based on the size of that, an additional 9 trees are required. So therefore, the 41 trees required by the code are met. The code also requires 1 foundation planting for 10 linear feet of building perimeter. Based on the size of the building, that's a total of 50 foundation plantings. The applicant's landscape plan includes 75 foundation plantings along the front of the building. There's some additional plantings provided, shrubs within the parking lot island and peninsula, and some perennials in the southwest corner, just behind that storage shed, just outside of the play area, probably the more visible part of the site. And then finally, some shrubbery here planted as screening from the parking lot around 149th Street West. Site lighting will be comprised of 10-foot high wall-mounted lights and 20-foot high pole-mounted heights. Those are within the maximum allowed by the code of 20 feet for pole-mounted lights within 100 feet of a residential use. The applicant also submitted a photometric study, which was included in the packet, that shows the maximum illumination at the property boundaries to be 0.3 lumen. The maximum illumination is 0.5 lumen at residential property boundaries and 1 lumen at non-residential property boundaries. So the site lighting falls well within the maximum set by the city code. The exterior elevations provided by the applicant show a mix of materials: stone, board and batten, siding, lap siding, some additional fascia, and a blue architectural band around the building. The city code requires the elevations to contain 50% stone or brick, so staff has included a condition that the elevations be updated to provide that 50% minimum stone and brick, and the applicant has been made aware of that requirement. A breakdown of the percentages of each material are in the lower right-hand corner, the stone comprising 26.43% of the exterior. The maximum building height in the central area here is 22.5 feet. The code allows up to 35 feet, and the majority of the building is 17 feet in height. A little clearer depiction of the materials that will be used on the building, or at least the stone and then the colors of the different siding is shown here. And then the applicant's plans included a trash enclosure with materials that are consistent with that of the principal structure, as well as the storage shed, which is in the southwest corner of the site. Also materials that match the building itself. The applicant does show a sign here on the storage shed, as well as some signage on the structure itself. Signage is handled through the sign permitting process and approved administratively, although staff's review does indicate that likely there will be no issues getting the signage as shown approved, as it falls well within the maximum size allowed by the code. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the site plan review. As the Planning Commission may be aware, the Commission is the sole reviewer of site plans, and so after this, the City Council does not need to take any action for work to move forward, but there are some conditions of approval that staff is recommending. The developer of the overall Rosewood Commons development is in the process of getting the plat recorded, so until that's done, the site work can't begin. Also, there's some existing easements. The council will be reviewing the vacation of those at its June 6th meeting, and then there are some additional requirements there related to conformance with the requirements of the engineer's memo, park dedication requirements, and then, as I said, the architectural elevations should be updated to meet that minimum 50%. Staff is happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I know the applicant is present, so I will definitely defer to them if I am unable to answer.
Thank you, Anthony. I just have two quick things. The parking, just a refresher, parking is not allowed on 149th, correct? So there would be no...
I am unsure the answer to that question.
Okay.
Off the top of my
I mean,
head.
they should have plenty of parking within there, that we shouldn't have any issue of that anyways. And then the 50% of the brick, I would like to, I don't know if the applicant has plans for how that's going to be, but I noticed that the two sides of the building, the west-facing sides of the building that are primarily going to be seen driving along 42 and Business Parkway there are more plain, maybe is the right way to say it. So if we could add brick, like if we could recommend to them to maybe that's some areas to add the brick, that would be excellent.
Sure.
That's my comments, not really questions. Are there any other questions from the commission on this item?
I had one. Do you have any information on the fence that'll be in back of the playground? And I'm just, maybe minor risk, but I was actually surprised to see the playground more adjacent to the highway. You mentioned there's a 30-foot setback, but I'm curious about what any requirements there are around that fencing, with safety precautions and so on.
So the applicant's fencing will consist of a 5-foot black steel decorative fence, 5 feet in height around the perimeter, and then 4 feet in height in between the different play areas. I definitely could defer to them on their experience with outdoor play areas, but the city code doesn't speak necessarily to the location of those play areas in relation to adjacent.
Are there any city or ordinances around the strength or materials other than what you've described?
It would be up to the building code.
Okay.
Is that property line for this property, is that right, the edge of 42 there then? Is that?
Well, it abuts to the right of way.
Okay, so there is still some further setback from the highway then?
Yeah, it's not going up to the,
Up to the
of
42,
the
there is a
road.
little bit of,
right.
I mean, it's the right of way, so who knows?
Yeah, the aerial here shows the parcel boundaries. This is the existing parcel. When it is recorded with the Rosewood Commons Second Edition, it'll be in line with this parcel boundary
So in addition to that boundary line, there's an additional 30 feet setback
for the structures.
for the structures?
But what is the boundary line?
There is no setback required for fencing.
I know, can you go back to that other aerial? So from 42, from the edge of the road to where the boundary line will be, do you know what that
I don't know off the
is?
top of my head
Okay.
how many feet
'Cause
that
I
is.
think that's what you're kind of thinking, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of the net distance from the highway to where that fence would be too.
Yeah, because
I-
that,
I
yeah, okay.
I can't measure it. I don't know the answer.
Nope, that's fine. Are there any other comments or questions? Or are you done with comments, questions?
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Whitman.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification on that setback then, is the measurement from the street to the structure, or is it from
It's-
the edge of the
It's from the
right-of-way?
property, yeah, the right of way to the structure. And then the site plan here shows a setback. It's hard for me to see, but it's about 12 feet from the property line in addition to the setback from the highway within there. So 12 feet plus whatever the ditch is.
Okay.
Got it. A couple other minor questions, comments here. One, I had spoken with Anthony today, but just for the record, I noticed that the landscaping requirement, which is 10% of the parking lot area must be landscaped. I noticed in the staff report that it states that the parking lot area is 22,816 square feet, which means 2,283 square feet must be landscaped, but actually 10% of 22,816 is 2281.6, so it seems to me it would be 2,282 square feet. Anthony pointed out to me that on this page, which is up right now for us, it looks like the architect might have made a mistake there. And so it should be 2,282 square feet, right? But that doesn't make any difference practically. It's just something I noticed, and I guess my math mind was thrown off when I saw that. The other question I have is So the in lieu park fee, is the applicant content with that fee? Does the applicant believe that's reasonable?
You'd have to ask the applicant. It's my understanding that there are no parks anticipated for this site, and therefore, instead of land, cash would be dedicated. So,
Okay.
Commissioner Powell.
Yes, based on the engineer's memo, it appears that they haven't had an opportunity to determine whether or not the adjacent pond has capacity.
yep.
And if that pond does need to be expanded, which condition would cover that? Because number 6, conformance with all comments contained in the engineer's memo, it doesn't specifically state that the applicant would expand the pond if it's found to be deficient. So I'm just wondering how we would tie up that loose end.
Well, if you want to update the recommendation, add a condition that's a little more clear, that makes you more comfortable, certainly feel free.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Anthony. This item is a public hearing item, so at this time, we will open up the public hearing. Anyone in the audience that would like to speak may do so at this time, coming to the podium, stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Peter Hilger. I'm the architect, 14 Pheasant Lane, North Oaks, Minnesota. I'm with Rylar LLC, been representing New Horizons since the late 1980s. So we're really pleased to put what we think might be our 100th center in Rosemont, although there's some debate about which is actually 100th. But this is basically a representation of the prototypical New Horizon Child Care Center that has been constructed in a number of locations around the Twin Cities and actually outstate as well. So to answer directly some of the questions that you had, if I can recall them correctly, I'll go right to the stormwater. We could grow corn on this site. That's how big it is. We've got way more room on this site than we really need for a typical childcare, but because it's a corner site, we actually have room. If the pond is an issue, we have room to expand, put a rain garden basically structure on the southeast corner of the property before it drains into the stormwater pond. However, we've been assured by KJ Walk, who did the original design of that pond that's there right now, that there was adequate capacity. So it's just a matter of going through that demonstration. But I have no concerns that one way or the other we can meet that requirement. And I really don't think, I'm not an engineer, but I really don't think we're going to need to expand the existing pond. That's just my gut feel. As far as your math error, yes, doesn't make a difference on the landscaping area, but appreciate your bringing that up. With respect to the exterior materials, this is an unusual site in that we basically have four fronts, which is why we like it, because we've got good exposure from all directions. So we're going to, like I said, I represented a prototypical facility with the amount of hard surface materials, stone brick that we normally represent, but to increase it to 50% is not going to be an issue, but we will try to balance it out architecturally. We'll probably end up with a little bit more than that, just to make sure that the architecture works. And I have to confer with New Horizon whether they want that to be stone or brick or some combination of that, whatever the materials are approved by court. We do not have an issue with that. With respect to the fencing and the setback from the highway, we're always concerned about proximity to roadways. However, the one thing that is perhaps the single element in a child care center that helps get noticed is the playground equipment and not the building. And so that's what people will recognize, and that's why we've positioned it the way we have. And the other reason that we've set the site plan the way we have is because we have the entrance on the northeast corner, which is very unusual. So we basically have to concentrate, rather than going around the site, we have to concentrate our parking and entry on that side, which leaves us with 3 sides of the building for play areas, again, on the visible sides. roughly by my calculation, looking at this, we are quite a ways away from the actual road edge, which is already a shoulder. In other words, there's a shoulder and then the lane is still farther in, but from the road edge itself, from what we can tell, it's about 55 feet to the fence. So that's still a pretty good distance away. The fence is a 5-foot high decorative picket fence, 5 foot because of security concerns for reach-overs. And in addition to that, all of the gates within the fence enclosure are provided with an alarm system and basically so kids can't leave undetected while they're under supervision. So the expansion that we're asking for here is, I'll just say, is probably an unlikely event because we very rarely design our centers for expansion. This one just happens to have the opportunity to do so. And so we wanted to make sure that we put building placement and where an expansion could occur for 2 additional classrooms in a place that made logical sense relative to the total organization without really affecting the parking requirements that would be needed for that addition and without affecting the playgrounds as they're presently proposed. I believe that took care of the questions that I heard, but I have Susan from New Horizon Academy, the district director, here in case you have operational questions. But otherwise, we're here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Peter. I'll ask the commission, are there any other questions for the applicant at this time?
No.
Yes, Commissioner Whitman.
Thank you, Chair. With the fence, so it's a 5-foot tall black steel open picket decorative fence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the typical kind of fence that you would put in one
Yep.
of these facilities? Okay.
Yeah, we've moved away from chain link. It's black, but we've not put chain link in for the longest time. Sometimes we may consider a chain link between the play areas, and those are only 4 foot because those are all monitored areas. We don't need the high fence in those areas. It's really, the 5-foot high is just for protection from the exterior for the kids.
And it looks like the maximum fence height in this district could go to 8 feet, but 5 feet is what you want?
Yes, we're not concerned about the deer here.
Okay. I didn't know if 5 feet, I mean, 5 feet seems kind of short to me.
Hey,
Sorry.
Right about here. So, it's plenty of height for kids, but if you can just imagine, it's very difficult. And the whole reason for the 5 foot is the reach over effect. We used to do 4 foot, we've increased it to 5 for security, and that's been working quite well.
Okay, but it sounds like it's the typical customary,
Yep.
standard kind of fence you would use in these types of facilities.
Yep.
Okay. And then, I don't know if you're the right person or if I asked the applicant about the park dedication fee question that I had.
Oh, you know, we talked about that today, and we're actually $90 under budget, so we're good.
All right.
We already budgeted for park dedication, and we're within $90, so I thought that was pretty good.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant from the commission?
One thing, I'm sorry, one thing I wanted to mention, and I talked with Anthony about this earlier, is we may elect to relocate the trash enclosure to a different part on the site to make it more convenient for staff. But that would be on the southeast corner of the parking lot rather than in the island, and so that would just increase the island space. And so Anthony said we could work that out at staff level when we submit for permits, so I'm just making you aware of that.
Thank you for that update. I appreciate it. Anything else?
Nope, unless you have anything to add? Nope.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the, you didn't want to speak, did you? No. Okay. Seeing no one else in the audience tonight, I will move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Kenninger and seconded by Commissioner Reed to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is now closed.
Madam Chair, I just want to
Yes.
add to the future expansion area is of a size where it does not meet the minimum threshold that would require a formal site plan review before the Planning Commission. That does not mean it will not have to meet all of the requirements of the zoning ordinance for all of the standards that I outlined in the staff report and tonight.
So building materials and all of those things
Yep,
would,
still all be required.
staff would review them and, okay, thank you for that additional clarification as well. Any other comments or questions from the commission?
I just have a couple comments. I've lived in Rosemont a few years now, and honestly, when I saw this on the agenda, I was like, started thinking about, is there any other daycare centers or this sort of building? So it's a nice addition to the community. I know New Horizons very reputable. My daughter's 34 and went as a toddler, so that's how long I'm sure they've been around, in the 80s for sure. So with that in mind, I would support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Rivera. I echo your comments. My kids also went to New Horizons. I wish this one was there when they went.
Yeah, I'll just add too, I mean, with Amber Fields right across the road there, it's a great location. It's going to be, I think, a big benefit to the residents there.
Okay. Commissioner Powell, are you interested in adding the condition on the engineering memo?
Chair, no, I think it's covered by the catch-all general comment to adhere to design standards for the city.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. With that, we could entertain a motion.
Motion to approve a site plan review allowing New Horizon Academy to construct a child care center at 2730 149th Street West, subject to the following conditions numbered 1 through 7.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Reed and seconded by Commissioner Whitman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Include this item this evening. Thank you. Thank you. And as Anthony stated earlier, this is the final destination for this item. It will not go forward, does not need to go forward to City Council. With that, we'll move to new business. Is there any new business for this evening?
There is none, Madam Chair.
New business. Are there anyone have any items for discussion?
Madam Chair, I think when we had talked earlier, you had indicated some desire for a maybe joint session with council and maybe a training session for the commission. Is that something you would like staff to kind of work on, and
Yes.
what kind of a time frame?
Yeah, so I can jump in. I did, when I spoke with Anthony earlier, I had suggested, actually in my interview when I did, when I applied for renewal of my term, I had mentioned to City Council, a couple years ago, we had done some joint meetings with them, and, you know, we've done some joint projects over the time, and I just thought we've got new City Council members, we've got new Planning Commission members over the last couple years, so it would be good to maybe do another joint meeting with them. The timing, I think, could be flexible. I know we're getting into the summer and people are busy, so maybe we could get it on the books for early fall, if that seems to be appropriate timing for what is coming forward and what City Council has as well. I also think it would be good, just as we continue to move forward with more projects and things coming our way, that maybe we do a review. I don't know that it needs to be the entire presentation that the lawyer has done for us in the past, but do a review of what is in our purview and what our role is in the grander scheme as we see these items. So we haven't done it for a couple of years. I can't actually remember the last time we've done it. So it's always sometimes good. 2 years? Okay. It seems longer than that. But yeah, so I just would suggest maybe to staff to think about those. I don't know if others have comments on.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. We'll work with the city administrator, who can coordinate with City Council and their agendas for a joint working session of the Planning Commission and City Council.
Perfect. Perfect. Anything else for discussion? Okay, I will just quickly review our next couple meetings, which I didn't write down ahead of time here. We have a meeting on June 27th, which will be the 4th Tuesday of June, July 25th, and August 28th. And please let Riley know if any of those are meetings you cannot attend. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting this evening. Meeting adjourned.
What was ours?